Welcome back to another episode of Murder, Mysteries, and More. My name's Kaylee.
My name is Desi.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell next to the subscribe button to turn on post notifications.
Before we get into this case, we always encourage those who have useful information for any unsolved case to please report it to your local police and sheriff department.
Chernobyl is the winner for this week's video. Thank you to all those who have voted. Ukraine is very well known for its struggles throughout time, from war with Russia for the past 100 plus years to the infamous power plant explosion that changed the lives of thousands forever. Today we will be covering the deadly Chernobyl disaster.
So, a little background about how Chernobyl became to be a thing. The Soviet Union invested heavily in nuclear power after World War II. They constructed a bunch of nuclear power plants throughout Russia and throughout Ukraine. And Chernobyl was one of these power plants, and the construction of the power plant began in 1972. Chernobyl was meant to have 12 units made up of 6 construction phases, and if completed, would have been the biggest nuclear power plant in the entire fucking world, which is astounding. Yeah, the plant would consist of 4 RMBK 1000 reactors, each capable of producing 1000 megawatts of electric power. And for those of you who don't know what RMBK stands for, it stands for Reactor Bolshoi Mashnistik Kanani, which in English translation is a high-power channel type reactor. All 4 reactors would produce about 10% of Ukraine's electricity, and like other sites that housed multiple RBMKs, a new city called Pripyat was created to house workers and their families nearby the plant. The first reactor was completed by 1977, along with the second one in 1978, the third one in 1981, and the fourth one in 1983. Reactor 5 was around 70% complete at the time of the Chernobyl incident.
The night of the explosion. April 26, 1986, sleep-deprived workers ran a series of tests on reactor number 4 during routine maintenance. The reason why they did this was because they wanted to see if the reactor could still be cooled if the plant were to lose power. Unfortunately, the workers violated multiple safety protocols, such as disabling automatic shutdown mechanisms and shutting down emergency safety systems, which was a big mistake.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Reactor 4 was already unstable at this point. This initiated a series of power surges along with rapid steam production and an increase in pressure that caused the steel and concrete cover plate to detach. The reactor then exploded and released radioactive matter into the air. Seconds later, a second explosion threw out fragments from the reactor. A partial meltdown of the core also occurred.
Some sources state that only 2 people were killed in the initial explosions, whereas others report the figure could be closer to actually 50 people. Emergency crews responding to the accident used helicopters to pour sand and boron on the debris, and the reason why they did this was because the sand was used to stop the fires, and the boron was used to prevent additional nuclear reactions. Officials closed off the area within 18 miles of the plant, except for those with official business at the plant. Despite hospitalizations of workers, firefighters, and the danger from the fallout and fire, no one in the area was evacuated until 36 hours after the disaster began, which is wild because that's like 36 hours of radioactive stuff in the air and you're just breathing it and you don't fucking know it.
It's highly toxic.
Very toxic, very bad for you. 335,000 people were evacuated and radiation had spread to as far as Sweden before the Soviet Union made an announcement about the Chernobyl incident.
The devastating after effects. 28 out of 600 workers on site died in the first 4 months after the incident due to severe radiation effects. Another 106 workers received high doses to cause acute radiation sickness. Now, radiation sickness symptoms are nausea, vomiting, loss of appetite, extreme nervousness, and confusion. burning sensations of the skin, fever, hair loss, ulcers, weakness. Radiation had also contained areas of Belarus, the Soviet Union, Ukraine, Italy, and France. Livestock were also born deformed, and among humans, several thousand radiation-induced illnesses and cancer deaths were expected in the long term. As many as 1,200 residents decided to return to their homes in the exclusion zone after the incident, despite warnings from the government about the effects of long lingering radiation. An area about 4 square miles became known as the Red Forest. It was called the Red Forest because so many trees turned a reddish-brown color due to the radiation and they died. The Chernobyl incident has been estimated to cost up to $235 billion worth of damages. Belarus lost a fifth of its agricultural land and saw 23% of its territory contaminated by radiation. And still to this day, the Red Forest still, if you have like a radiation detector, that area just goes off really high.
Yeah, it's like heavily radiated, and that's crazy that radiation can do that.
And you can definitely like see the effects if you go there. I was watching a video earlier, and what's wild about this is that some of the trees that were exposed to this radiation, some of them age very quickly. They did take lung scans of firefighters, and they saw like they might only be like 30 years old, but they had the lungs of an 80-year-old.
Yeah, radiation speeds up like your lifespan in like certain ways, not like, on the outside, but on the inside of your body. But now into our conspiracy theories, which I love these ones. There were so many, but we're obviously only going to cover a couple. So the first conspiracy theory is the Blackbird. In the Ivankiv Rayon, the district of Ukraine where Chernobyl sites, people tell the story of a black bird. But this wasn't just any ordinary bird. It was a human creature with a black headless body, giant wings, and piercing red eyes. Anyone who saw this creature suffered from nightmares and threatening calls. In early April 1986, people in and around the power plant began to experience a series of strange events revolving around sightings of a mysterious creature. Workers alleged that they saw the blackbird at the Chernobyl plant on the day of the explosion. Many people actually believe that the blackbird is comparable to the Mothman, whose presence only ever meant one thing, that a catastrophic event would soon follow. Some even suggest that Blackbird could be the Mothman himself, but I don't believe it. Another theory suggests that the Blackbird of Chernobyl was nothing more than the misidentification of the black stork. And for those of you who don't know what a black stork is, it's an endangered species endemic to southern Eurasia, and it stands 3 feet tall and it has a wingspan of nearly 6 feet.
Theory number 2, intentional explosion. Many people theorize that the CIA infiltrated Chernobyl and triggered the explosion to sabotage the Soviet Union. The CIA has admitted to interfering with Russian technology by planting malware in its computer systems. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, so this could have possibly been done intentionally to disband the USSR. Also, it's worth noting that the US and the Soviet Union were in the middle of a Cold War when Chernobyl exploded. According to Mikhail Gorbachev, the Chernobyl explosion was, quote, the real cause of the collapse of the Soviet Union, end quote. He also says, Chernobyl was a turning point that opened the possibility of much greater freedom of expression, to the point where the system in place could no longer continue. Others say that the Soviet Union did it themselves. stating, quote, "The Chernobyl disaster was conducted by the Soviet regime due to the failure of an incredible missile defense radio structure called the Duga-3, also known as the Russian Woodpecker. Suspected of being wildly over budget, the structure was deemed such an expensive flop that in order to eliminate it, the nearby Chernobyl facility was allowed to go into meltdown," end quote.
Bro, just imagine you did that all over a missile. Could never be me. Yeah, Soviet Union had its problems, but we all know about that, of course. And then into our last theory, which is always my favorite, aliens. Need I say more, though? Just kidding. In the days leading up to the explosion, there were several eyewitness reports of UFOs in the area. There's even a sighting of one above the power plant moments after the explosion. One witness, Mikhail Beritsky, says, "I and other people from my team went to the site of the blast at night. We saw a ball of fire and it was slowly flying in the sky. I think the ball was 6 or 8 meters in diameter. Then we saw 2 rays of crimson light stretching towards the 4th unit. The object was some 300 meters from the reactor. The event lasted for about 3 minutes. The lights of the object went out and it flew away in the northwestern direction." UFO enthusiasts claim that the extraterrestrials were there to prevent any further destruction and to stave off a deadly thermonuclear blast. Pravda, a Russian broadsheet newspaper, revealed that a UFO was indeed seen by hundreds of people hovering above the plant for as long as 6 hours. Them aliens, they always be up to some bullshit.
I want to adopt a little green alien.
I want to have a little green alien baby. I want him to cause some chaos. Be a menace to the society.
Anyways, into the Reddit comments. The first post is by Spaghetti O Squid. "What is the creepiest fact about Chernobyl disaster that you know?" Chernobyl_dude. "Okay, one more. I met my future wife in the zone, in the red forest, seriously." Spaghetti O Squid says, "How does that happen?" Chernobyl_dude. "We both worked in the zone 10 plus years. I've been doing a pretty routine dosimetry in the area, and somewhere near so-called Maelstrom Polygon, I met a girl who had been on a radiobiology study. We had a little chat and I suggested together to see some radioactive swamps because we were pretty bored. It sounds strange, but in some places in the red forest do look romantic, assuming normal people do not go in the zone." So long story short, we are married 5 years later. That is a very interesting story for a way for you to meet your wife. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to meet your wife. Chef Rob H. Sheep that were... the damn Reddit thing just fucking shit out on me. You bitch. Anyways. It said, "Goodbye here. Chef Rob H. Sheep that were slaughtered due to radioactive materials found in the grass that they were feeding on. Scotland and part of the Lake District, UK, was seen unfit for human consumption, but the butchered lamb turned up in UK prisons for prisoners on their menus in the late 80s, nearly 90s. Many prisoners were amazed that lamb chops were available when lamb is never available to convicts due to cost. So they fed them radioactive sheep? That's not okay, but
Yeah.
alright. Yeah, I'm sure some people died from that.
I'm sure.
But Nikoff, I lived in Kiev at that time. On all Sunday, they placed classical music on the radio. No news, nothing. Just classical music. I thought maybe Gorbachev passed away because they always played classical music before the official announcement. Our dear leader Brezhnev died. Our dear leader Andropov dies. And our dear leader Chernenko died."
Oh.
Interesting.
Zaki's boy 69. Nice name. That 350,000 people had to leave their hometown. Yeah, I mean, imagine if you were a kid and this happened and you just had to pack up your stuff and leave. That's kind of sad.
Sucks. Yeah. Frankenberry 505. The entirety of the Chernobyl disaster produced at least 100 times more than radiation than Hiroshima. Commonly known fact, but still scary as fuck. Very scary as fuck, actually.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
It's insane.
Yeah, Hiroshima is still uninhabitable as well, so
Yeah, and guys, you should see Oppenheimer.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a good movie.
Depicts everything so well.
It
Honestly.
does.
Good movie.
And then reserved flute. It will take 20,000 years for Chernobyl to be habitable again.
Yeah, that will take a
It's
very
gonna
long
take
time.
at least that. I've also heard it could even take billions of years.
Yeah, radiation stays in the ground for a very long time, so unless they dig up all the ground, but even then, that's not gonna work. Like,
And props to the people who did clean some of the radiation up, so that people could do tours.
yeah, it's really cool that they can do tours now, but they have to be like very selective of like how long they do tours for.
Definitely.
Yeah, they don't want to expose them to too much
But
radiation.
right now is not a.
Oh no, not with the war going on.
No. To the next one. It's by Rally_22. What's the scariest fact about the Chernobyl disaster? Warclad says that people started dying from acute radiation sickness within weeks after the explosion. The required dose to be lethal within that short of a time span is horrifying.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is.
Yeah, that's down with the sickness. Bunny Comrade says, not scariest, but saddest is the fact that people, especially first responders, were sent to die without fully knowing nor understanding what they were facing and then suffering horrible agony. Very true. They did not tell them what was going on.
They did not.
Mm-mm.
Cool one. It almost made Europe uninhabitable. That is horrifying to think about. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty devastating what it did, but it could have been even worse.
Yeah, it could have been so much worse. Joe Carter 93 says that the same flawed RMBK reactor design was in use for a number of years after the Chernobyl disaster, and that there are still 8 in operation today. I know they retrofitted various safety features to the other RMBK reactors after Chernobyl, but the same overall flawed design is still in use. They're also built without a containment vessel. That's dangerous.
That is.
Bro. You want another repeat of Chernobyl? Go ahead.
Slagboom_69. I call my fiance an irritated Chernobyl baby. He's originally from Ukraine, and he started calling me an American asbestos baby, which really stung because my last apartment before I moved into it was full of asbestos.
Huh.
Okay. JE_Mapelli_DJ. The elephant's foot is still in there. People used to tour the destroyed building and reactor. I know it's covered by the concrete lead sarcophagus, but the eeriness of the images of the elephant's foot, knowing that it's abandoned, it's still a death trap. That has always creeped me out so much. Yeah, the pictures are so creepy.
Yeah, the pictures are extremely creepy, actually. Catch a stream. Yeah. That because of Chernobyl, worldwide effects on nuclear power were set back by decades. They were. Oh, ill syllabub 4243. Homeless dogs are still running around.
There are.
Them poor doggos.
Poor puppies. Poor radioactive puppies. And then on to the last. It's by Vanda865. How could Chernobyl have been worse? Moby Head 1. The reactors were far enough apart, the bubbler pool exploding. Destroying the other reactors is implausible, if not impossible. The greatest danger was the possibility of a melted down core reaching the water table. This still wouldn't have caused the kind of destruction that would have destroyed the other 3 reactors, but it would have been an environmental, economic, and health disaster of truly epic proportions. The bubbler pool exploding would have been a miniature version of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good it did not get to that point.
Yeah. Dingbat 99999. The China Syndrome nightmare scenario is a massive molten radioactive material burns down to the ground and hits the water table. This initiates a steam explosion spewing radioactive material over the place while at the same time poisoning the water table, which would have been very bad because that would have been all over Europe. no good water for them. They would have
No.
died.
FDVP. A bear happens to wander on the property, innocently munching on berries until it's zapped by the explosive radiation. Up from the depths of the disaster, the bear grows 30 stories high, breathes fire, his head in the sky. Mishazilla. Oh my gosh.
Oof. Somebody's talking about UFOs again.
Yep, the aliens were trying to warn us all.
They were like, don't fuck with the nuclear. Don't fuck with the nuclear. We did it anyways. Cybernaut Neko. If the Soviets would not have spent their last dime for the cleanup afterwards, after the Soviet Union had collapsed, then it would have exploded a second time. That would be fucked.
That would.
Like, after sitting all those years and then it explodes again? Damn. Yeah, that's a really big one. It could have happened and it didn't. Romboy Tarek said, imagine it sat on an old coal mine that was then ignited by the meltdown. Yeah. That would have been so much worse.
Clearjack 87, the core avalanche farther burned through the floors deep enough to the earth to reach magma. Pressure released the magma would cause an eruption and scatter the remnants of the core 20,000 feet in the air around the world. Yeah, it could have been very, very deadly for not just Europe, but the entirety of the world.
Yeah, because it would have affected all of us. Chernobyl has been turned into a tourist attraction, an HBO TV series, and is still remembered by many. Cleanup for the Chernobyl is not expected to be completed until 2065 and will not be inhabitable for at least another 20,000 years due to the long-lasting effects of ground absorption of radiation. Thank you for listening to another episode of Murders, Mysteries, and More. Join us next week for another exciting case, and as always, remember to keep your eyes open. You never know when you could be taken out by a nuclear explosion.